Alice in Wonderland. Alice was sitting by her sister on the riverbank when suddenly a white rabbit ran past. There was nothing in that, but when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it, Alice jumped up and ran after it right down the rabbit hole till she found herself in an underground hall. There was a table in the middle, and on the table a bottle marked "Drink me."
Drink you? No. I'll look first and see if it's marked poison. For if you drink much from a bottle marked poison, it's almost certain to disagree with you.
However, this bottle was not marked poison, so Alice ventured to taste it.
What a curious feeling. I must be shutting up like a telescope. Curiouser and curiouser. I'm only 2 inches high. Oh dear, how queer everything is today. I wonder if I've changed in the night. I'll try if I know all the things I used to know. Let me see. 4 times 5 is 12. Oh, that's wrong. I'll try and say, how doth the little busy bee? How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spread his claws, and welcome little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? Oh dear, I'm sure those are not the right words.
But after a lot of adventures, Alice was helped by a rather rude caterpillar. She'd wandered out into a wood and found him sitting on a mushroom, smoking.
What's the matter with you?
I can't remember things.
Repeat, you are old, Father William.
You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it might injure the brain. But now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why I do it again and again. You are old, said the youth, one would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balance an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I have answered your questions, and that is enough, said his father, don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off or I'll kick you downstairs.
from beginning to end.
Then he got down from the mushroom and crawled away, saying,
One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter.
One side of what? The other side of what?
Of the mushroom.
So Alice broke off 2 bits and nibbled them alternately until she was about 9 inches high. Then she walked on till she came to a house where the footman was a frog. In the kitchen sat an ugly duchess nursing a baby. A cook was shaking pepper into the soup. A cat was grinning from ear to ear, and everyone was sneezing.
Achoo! Please, would you tell me why your cat grins like that?
It's a Cheshire cat, and that's why. Pig.
I didn't know that cats could grin.
You don't know much, and that's a fact.
There's certainly too much pepper in that soup.
If everyone minded their own business, the world would go round a deal faster than it does.
Speak roughly to your little boy and beat him when he sneezes. He only does it to annoy because he knows it teases. Wow, 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 wow.
Here, you may nurse it a bit. I must go and play croquet with the Queen.
If I don't take this child away with me, they're sure to kill it in a day or two. Don't grunt. If you're going to turn into a pig, my dear, I'll have nothing more to do with you.
But there was no mistake. The baby had really turned into a pig, so she let it run free and went off to the royal croquet party. It was a very odd one, for the guests were all dressed as a pack of cards. The croquet balls were hedgehogs, the mallets flamingos. Everyone played out of turn, and the Queen went stamping about, crying,
Off with their heads!
Suddenly she turned to Alice.
Have you seen the mock turtle yet?
I don't even know what a mock turtle is.
It's the thing mock turtle soup's made from. He'll tell you about his sorrows.
So Alice was sent off to visit the mock turtle, who lived by the sea with his friend, the griffin. The griffin looked like a large dog with an eagle's wings and beak. And the mock turtle had a turtle's shell, a calf's head, and mournful eyes.
Once I was a real turtle and went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise.
Why?
We called him Tortoise because he taught us. Really, you're very dull.
Tell her about the dancing.
Will you walk a little faster, said the whiting to the snail. There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you? Will you, won't you? Won't you join the dance? Will you, won't you? Will you, won't you? Won't you join the dance?
If I'd been the whiting, I'd have said to the porpoise, keep back, please. We don't want you with us.
But no wise fish goes to sea without a porpoise. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going on a journey, I should say, with what purpose?
Don't you mean purpose?
I mean what I say.
Sing her turtle soup, will you, old fellow?
Very well. Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen. Who for such dainties would not stoop? Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup.
And he took Alice's hand and hurried her off to court. The King and Queen of Hearts were seated on their thrones, the Knave of Hearts was the prisoner, the White Rabbit was dressed as a herald, and in the jury box were all the creatures Alice had met on her travels.
Herald, read the accusation.
The White Rabbit stood up and said, "The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts, all on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them quite away."
Consider your verdict.
Not yet, not yet. There's a great deal to come before that. There was indeed. Alice felt herself beginning to grow, and as she got back to her own proper size, a set of verses was handed up to the king as important evidence against the prisoner.
Please, Your Majesty, I didn't write it, and they can't prove that I did. There's no name signed at the end.
That proves his guilt.
It doesn't. Why, you don't even know what the verses are about.
Read them.
They told me you had been to her and mentioned me to him. She gave me a good character, but said I could not swim. I gave her one, they gave him two, you gave us three or more. They all returned from him to you, though they were mine before. If I or he should chance to be involved in this affair, he'd trust to you to set them free exactly as they were. My notion was that you had been before she had this fit, an obstacle that came between him and ourselves and it. He'd trust to you to set them free exactly as we were. An obstacle that came between him and ourselves and it. An obstacle that came between him and ourselves and it. Before she had this fit, before she had this fit. Don't let him know she liked them best, for this must ever be a secret kept from all the rest between yourself and me. Don't let him know she liked them best, for this must ever be a secret kept from all the rest between yourself and me. For this must ever be, for this must ever be a secret kept from all the rest between yourself and me. A secret kept from all the rest between yourself and me. A secret kept from all the rest, a secret kept from all the rest, a secret kept from all the rest, from all the rest and me.
I do not believe there's an atom of meaning in it.
She doesn't believe there's an atom of meaning in it.
Let the jury consider their verdict.
No, sentence first and verdict afterwards.
Stuff and nonsense.
Hold your tongue.
I won't.
Off with her head.
Who cares for you? You're nothing but a pack of cards.
At this, the whole pack rose into the air and came flying down upon her. She gave a little scream and tried to beat them off, and found herself lying on the bank with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some dead leaves that had fluttered from the trees onto her face.
Wake up, Alice, dear. Oh, I've had such a curious dream.
In a wonderland she lies, dreaming as the summer dies, drifting down the stream, lifting on the stream, the golden gleam. Life, what is it but a dream?
Alice through the looking glass. The white kitten had nothing to do with it. It was the black kitten's fault entirely. The white kitten had been having its face washed by the old cat, but the black kitten had been stopped from tangling up Alice's knitting and patting at the chessmen with its paw, and when Alice held it up to the looking glass so that it should see how sulky it looked, the glass suddenly began to get all soft like gauze. And somehow Alice herself was up on the mantelpiece and came lightly down into the looking-glass room where everything was the wrong way round and the chessmen were walking about and talking. So Alice went out into the garden and up the hill, and at the top of it she found the red chess queen.
Where do you come from? Open your mouth a little wider when you speak, and always say, Your Majesty.
I only wanted to see the country, Your Majesty. I declare it's just like a large chessboard, with the tiny brooks and the little green hedges and the ground all in squares and the men moving about. How I wish I was one of them.
That's easily managed. You could be the White Queen's pawn if you liked. You're on the 2nd square already. When you're on the 8th square, you'll be a queen.
And with that she went off, and Alice soon moved through to the 4th square, which belonged to Tweedledum and Tweedledee, 2 fat little brothers with their names marked on their collars.
Would you tell me, please, the best way out of the wood?
Do you like poetry?
Yes, some poetry. Which is the best way?
What shall I repeat to her?
The walrus and the carpenter is the longest.
The sun was shining.
If it's very long, would you tell me first?
The sun was shining on the sea.
Shining with all his might.
He did his very best to make.
The billows smooth and bright.
And this was odd because it was
The middle of the night.
the walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said it would be grand.
Oh, oysters, come and walk with us, the walrus did beseech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each.
Then 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd because, you know, they hadn't any feet.
Then 4 more oysters followed them, and yet another 4. And thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. Time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings,
And why the sea's boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings.
A loaf of bread, the walrus said, is what we chiefly need.
Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed. Oh, not on us, the oysters cried, turning a little blue. After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do.
The night is fine, the walrus said, do you admire the view? It seems a shame, the walrus said, to play them such a trick, after we brought them out so far and made them trot so quick.
The carpenter said nothing but, the butter's spread too thick.
I weep for you, the walrus said, I deeply sympathize. With sobs and tears he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes.
Oh, oysters, said the carpenter, you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again?
But answer came there none.
But answer came there none. And this was scarcely odd because they'd eaten every one.
No sooner was the song finished than the brothers began to quarrel, and Alice was thankful when a monstrous crow flew by and frightened them into running away. She couldn't blame them. Its wings made quite a hurricane.
Somebody's shawl is being blown away.
As she caught it, the White Queen came running after it, and Alice gave it back to her.
She's dreadfully untidy, and every single thing is crooked. May I put your shawl straight for you?
I don't know what's the matter with it. It's out of temper, I think. I've pinned it here and I've pinned it there, but there's no pleasing it. What do you want to buy?
Alice was startled. They'd crossed into the 5th square as they talked, and the White Queen had suddenly turned into an old sheep in spectacles. She was sitting behind the counter of a little shop, knitting, and the shelves behind her had dolls on them, and eggs and work boxes. Alice decided to buy an egg, put the money on the counter, and held out her hand.
I never put things into people's hands. You must get it for yourself.
But when Alice went to the shelf, the egg seemed to get further and further away. And as she followed it, she crossed a little brook, which was somehow flowing through the shop, and at once she saw that the egg had grown into Humpty Dumpty, sitting on a wall. But he was so argumentative that she soon got tired of talking to him and wandered on until she found the White King talking to one of his messengers, Hare.
What's happened in the town?
Oh, whisper it.
They're at it again!
Do you call that whispering? If you do such a thing again, I'll have you buttered.
Who are at it again?
Why, the Lion and the Unicorn. Let's run and see them.
So they trotted on until they came into sight of a large crowd, in the middle of which the Lion and the Unicorn were fighting.
The Lion and the Unicorn were fighting for the crown. The Lion beat the Unicorn all round the town. Some gave them white bread and some gave them brown. Some gave them plum cake and drummed them out of town.
Allowed for refreshments?
Then bread and butter was handed round, and Alice was told to cut a great plum cake. Just then the Unicorn sauntered by and stared at her.
What is this?
This is a child.
Oh, I always thought they were fabulous monsters. Well, hand round the plum cake, monster.
I can't. I've cut several slices, but they always join on again.
You don't know how to manage looking-glass cakes. Hand it round first and cut it afterwards.
He was right. But before the cake was eaten, the drums began to roll so loudly that Alice felt quite deafened and sprang across the little brook in her terror.
If that doesn't drum them out of town, nothing ever will.
Oh, it was a glorious victory.
Oh, you must be the White Knight. May I help you off with your helmet?
Oh, thank you. I'd be glad to get rid of it.
I do like him. He has such a gentle face. But his armor fits him very badly. Why has your horse got beehives and carrots and fire irons and anklets hanging on it? What are the anklets for?
To guard against the bites of sharks. It's an invention of my own. But you look sad. Let me sing you a song to comfort you.
Is it very long?
It's long, but it's very, very beautiful. Everyone who hears me sing it, either it brings tears into their eyes, or else...
Or else what?
Or else it doesn't, you know. I'll tell thee everything I can. There's little to relate. I saw an aged man sitting on a gate. He said, I hunt for haddock's eyes amongst the heather bright. I work them into waistcoat buttons in the silent night. And that's the way, he gave a wink, in which I get my wealth.
and very gladly will I drink your honor's noble health. I thanked him much for telling me the way he got his wealth, but chiefly for his wish that he might drink my noble health. And now if e'er by chance I put my finger into glue, or madly squeeze a right-hand foot into a left-hand shoe, or if I drop upon my toe a very heavy weight, I weep, for it reminds me so of that old man I used to know, whose look was mild, whose speech was slow, whose hair was whiter than the snow, whose face was very like a crow, with eyes like cinders all aglow, who seemed distracted with his woe, and rocked his body to and fro, and muttered mumblingly and low, as if his mouth were full of dough, who snorted like a buffalo. That summer evening long ago, sitting on a gate,
Well, I must turn now. You've only a few yards to go and you'll be a queen.
Thank you so much for coming so far, and for the song. I liked it very much.
You didn't cry as much as I thought you would, he said, and off he rode. Alice waved till he was out of sight. Then she ran down to the brook, bounded across, and at once felt something heavy on her head. It was a golden crown, and she was standing in front of an arched doorway over which were the words, Queen Alice. The door was flung open, and she walked up a large hall filled with guests, animals, birds, and even a few flowers. There were 3 chairs at the head of the table. The red and white queens had taken 2 of them, and Alice sat down in the middle.
You've missed the soup and fish. Let me introduce you to the joint. Alice, mutton. Mutton, Alice. Now, we'll drink your health.
Queen Alice's health.
To the looking-glass world, it was Alice that said, I've a scepter in hand, I've a crown on my head. Let the looking-glass creatures, whatever they be, come and dine with the red queen, the white queen, and me.
Then fill up the glasses with treacle and ink, or anything else that is pleasant to drink. Mix sand with the cider and wool with the wine, and welcome Queen Alice with 90 times 9, with 90 times 9, with 90 times 9. And welcome Queen Alice with 90 times 9.
I rise to return thanks.
Take care, something's going to happen.
It did. The candles grew up to the ceiling like beds of rushes with fireworks at the top. The leg of mutton sat in the queen's chair, the soup ladle walked up the table, and the red queen suddenly dwindled down to the size of a little doll, running round merrily after her own shawl, which trailed behind her. Alice pounced on her.
As for you, I'll shake you into a kitten, that I will.
And she shook her. The Red Queen's face grew very small, and her eyes got large and green. And still as Alice went on shaking her, she kept on growing shorter and fatter and softer and rounder, and it really was a kitten after all.